I'm going to build out a chart here to show you how, well, actually what I want to do here is show you the two forces of nature. The only two real forces of nature that are at work in the universe. Now, of course, some people have called these love and fear because that's ultimately the dynamics in consciousness that they are based upon. Consciousness is everything. Pure energy, pure consciousness. It's the root of everything. Pure vibration. Okay? It is that which is being, having an experience that you can't put any kind of a label on. And then it takes its innumerable myriad forms when vibration is added to it and it comes into the illusion of matter through vibration, through vibratory energy. And many people have called these forces love and fear. But in the occult circles, they are referred to as evolution and involution. In the scientific world, and all occultism is hidden science, folks. It's not a belief system at its core level. Occultism is not really a religion. When it's perverted and turned toward the satanic, yes, it's a religion because then it holds us back. But what true occultism is, from the positive point of view, is it's hidden knowledge about the laws of the universe and the human psyche and how they operate. So they are sciences. The occult knowledge comprises a science. That's why when I'm putting forward this new documentary, I am calling it Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law. So it is, the very beginning is somewhat about me. I have to explain a little bit about my background to people who know nothing about me and what I do. So that's why the first part of it is called Mark Passio, because it's a very, very brief bio of myself at the beginning of the documentary. And then we go into the science of natural law and how adherence to it or opposition to it determines our experience as an entire human society. And this is what part of the satanic ritual of our entire society is. Getting people to not understand natural law so that they're wandering blind, never really knowing what's right and what's wrong, truly. From a true knowledge point of view. And when you don't know that, you can't align your behavior to it effectively, correctly. And then you have a society that's just in abject chaos and going down the path of tyranny as a result of that ignorance. That's called the law of freedom. And it's all contained in these occult forces that are at work in our lives, in the whole universe, in the whole manifest universe. No matter where you go, these are the two main forces. These are the two ultimate forces of nature at work in all of creation. Evolution and involution. In the scientific realm, they have been referred to as syntropy and entropy. Now, most people have known or heard the word entropy, but most people have never heard the word syntropy, which is proposed as the scientific word for the opposite force of entropy. Now, some people will say in the scientific realm that there is only entropy, or there is only the dissolution of energy and matter going into more undifferentiated forms as time progresses forward. And syntropy in the scientific realm is looked at as the exportation of entropy. Meaning if your room gets dirty, to clean it up, you have to take the debris and move it somewhere else. Water cleans things, it moves things away. It's a syntropic force and motion and dynamic because it is a carrying agent. And it takes things that are debris agents and it moves them from one place to another. So it exports entropy, and different forms of energy do that. You could burn it and it converts it to a different form of energy. You can clean it with water, get the debris moving, etc. So entropy is like a default decaying condition that if you don't apply will to something, it degrades and decays over time. And this is why evolution is the ordering force. Syntropy is the ordering force. Entropy is the dissolving force. The chaotic force. Okay, so let's look at each one of these occult forces in turn. Entropy or syntropy represents creation or advancement. It is that which is always making new things and pushing the envelope forward, moving things to new and higher forms. It generates more complexity and more diversity. That's what the force of evolution does, or syntropy, the ordering force. More complexity, more diversity. It advances truth and wisdom in any given society, anywhere in the universe. If we are aligning ourselves to the syntropic force, or the force of evolution, we are aligning ourselves to truth, to natural law, to wisdom. It is the force which moves consciousness in the universe forward. More consciousness, more understanding, more awareness. It is the force which acts as for the advancement of good, advancing goodness and morality in any given society. So to align yourselves with evolution, with the syntropic force, is to create and align yourself with goodness, with natural law, with morality. Evolution is the force which moves freedom forward to greater, ever greater expressions, higher levels of freedom, to be able to do more and experience more. It is the force which advances survival and life itself. It is ultimately the force of order, the ordering force within creation that counteracts and fights against the force that is breaking everything down into its constituent elements and degenerating things and forcing them into chaos and forcing them backwards into less evolved forms. That's involution or entropy. Scientifically, it is called entropy. But occultically, it is called involution. This is the force that propagates degeneration, decay, stagnation, not moving forward, staying where you're at, or moving backwards. It is less complexity, more simplicity, less diversity, more uniformity, more undifferentiation, whereas evolution differentiates and creates diversity in new forms. Involution or entropy breaks things down into further and further levels of simplicity, uniformity, and undifferentiation. Involution stagnates understanding. In addition to just matter and energy, it stagnates the mind, the psychology. It creates ignorance. It forces us toward ignorance and allows us to take into our minds deception and untruth. It's the force which won't allow us to look at truth. It's the egoic force which won't allow us to admit that we are wrong and learn from our mistakes. That's what pushes everything in consciousness backwards and creates unconsciousness. So it counteracts the movement of consciousness and creates unconsciousness. It puts consciousness into a ball, pushes it down, doesn't allow it to unfurl and expand and flower. It crushes consciousness. It advances evil, immorality. It stagnates our ability to understand natural law at work in the world. It wants to, the force of involution wants moral decay. It wants moral stagnation. It wants moral relativism, because that's what brings more immoral actions into the world and ultimately creates the state that we call evil. And ultimately, involution and entropy is the force driven by fear, which ultimately results in human slavery, which is where we're at. This is the force we have succumbed to as a species by not exerting our will, by not exerting true care for truth and for rights, and not exerting right behavior, right thought leading to right understanding, and then put forward into the world as right action. We're not exercising the willpower and courage to do that. That's why the force of involution and entropy has taken over, because it is the force which has put us into slavery through our fear, our ignorance, and our lack of right action. And ultimately, involution or entropy results in death and ultimately extinction, which is where humanity's going to head if we don't turn things around. This is ultimately the force of chaos. The thing which chaotically breaks down consciousness, the movement forward of all forms of life, and holds it back from progressing, which is what the actual plan of creation really is to move forward in consciousness, forward in higher levels of expression of complexity, diversity, move forward in truth and an understanding and wisdom and consciousness, higher levels of freedom and advancement of life itself. And this chaotic involutionary force that we have succumbed to, practically succumbed to, it wants death, it wants chaos, it wants slavery. So you could look at it you could look at this as, on the left-hand side here we have love, on the right-hand side we have fear. Evolution, involution. But what you can really look at it as, how I like to look at it as, the force of entropy or syntropy is, the force of evolution or syntropy, I should say, is natural law. And the force of involution or entropy is Satanism. See, if we're really getting down to the core of this all, the force which ultimately evolves us and moves everything forward in the human domain and in really every other domain of life and consciousness is natural law, is our alignment with natural law. So I put the natural law card here of the tarot, of the major arcana of the tarot, to represent this force. In actuality, the card that would represent evolution would be the Hanged Man card, because that is the servant of natural law. So I'm saying natural law here is really the ultimate expression of evolution. Okay, if we align ourselves to it. Alignment to it is the Hanged Man card of the major arcana. Okay, so that's actually card number 10 on the deck is the Hanged Man. Card number 11, of course, is Justice, natural law. The servant of natural law who willingly accepts his role as the one who is the herald to teach it and bring it fully forward into the domain of human consciousness is the Hanged Man on the tarot deck. Okay? So, I'm sorry, it's not card 10. My mistake, I apologize. It is card 12. Okay? And I always remember that it's card 12 because it is one of my birth cards. My two cards in the major arcana of the tarot deck personally, you use your birth month and your birth day. It's a little aside here to this relating to tarot, which I think people will find interesting who want to look at the tarot from an esoteric occult point of view. To know which two cards of the major arcana are, you take your birth month and your birth day. Now, if they are, let's say if it's a day like 30, then you reduce. 3 plus 0 would be 3, so your birth day card would be 3, okay? You take the month, which would be either 1 through 12, and then you would take your day card, which would be 1 through 31, okay? And if it's anywhere from... since there are only 22 cards, I'm sorry, in the tarot deck, one is a 0, which would not apply because that's the soul card or the fool card. You would go up through 21. So dates of the month 22 through 31 would have to be reduced. So, for example, 22 would be reduced to 4, 23 would be reduced to 5, and so on. So if I take my birth month, which is August, that's 8. That's the strength card or the courage card of the deck. The woman holding the lion's jaws open. Okay, that's my month, my birth month card. That is one of my tarot cards. And then the second one, which you associate with your birth, is the day card. My day is 12. I'm August 12th. I'm born August 12th, so 8 and 12. 12 is the Hanged Man card, and that represents the servant of natural law. How appropriate. And how appropriate that my month card is the strength or courage card, the force which has to be directly aligned with your will center to be able to do that work. So the tarot can teach you so much about yourself that it's not even funny. It's almost scary how accurate it is when you really understand how to esoterically interpret it. So the Hangman card is the force of evolution, is the servant of evolution, or it could be seen as the evolution card itself. But I am talking about here in the very big overarching terms here, okay? Evolution is natural law itself. The force of evolution is natural law itself. And then Satanism is the involutionary force, the adversary, the opposer to natural law. Shaitan, Satan, okay? So that's the force of chaos and entropy at work in the world that gets us to go against natural law or remain ignorant of it. Now, the card that would be exactly opposite at the same level of the macrocosmic tree of life, if we lay out the major arcana according to the two trees, the microcosmic tree and the macrocosmic tree of the Kabbalah, and we lay out the cards from 0 through 22 on those two trees, the first 11 on the microcosmic tree, starting with the 0 card at the Da'at position, and then progressing forward, cards 1 through 10 on the Sephirot, on the tree of life. That gives us the first 11 cards of the major arcana on the microcosmic tree of life, representing the forces at work in the individual consciousness. And then we take the second half of the major arcana, cards 11 through 21, and we lay those out 11 through 20 on the Sephirot of the tree of life, the macrocosmic tree of life, then putting the world card, card number 21, or the 22nd card of the major arcana at the Da'at position, representing the universe, the forces at work in the universe. We end up with Justice, card number 11, at the highest position on the macrocosmic tree of life. I've gone through this in my presentation called Demystifying the Occult, Part 1. Okay? It's at the end of that where I do this tarot card breakdown. I've also done it in the audio podcast version of What on Earth is Happening. You can get that in the podcast section of whatonearthishappening.com. So if you lay the cards out like that, you will see Justice, the natural law card, is the highest force of creation, seated at the Keter position of the macrocosmic tree of life. The two cards directly underneath the Justice card on the macrocosmic tree of life at the Chokmah and Binah Sephirot, respectively, would be the Hangman and the Death card. Okay? So that the Death card on the tarot deck, the major arcana of the tarot, would be representative of the force of involution, whereas the Hangman card represents the force of evolution, which is the servant of natural law, the moral laws that govern all of the universe. So what I'm putting into perspective here is, if we understand that these are the only two occult forces that are really operating in all of nature, love and fear, evolution, which pushes us forward, or syntropy, versus involution, which pushes us backwards, or entropy, we are really talking about whether we are in alignment with natural law or whether we are in opposition with natural law, the true moral laws of creation. So to be in alignment with natural law is to align ourselves with the force of evolution, and to be in opposition with natural law is to align ourselves with Satanism, the force which actually acts as the adversary or the opposer of natural law and evolution, the involutionary or entropic force in nature.